everyone, and welcome to My Brain is a Wonderland. This is the podcast for neurodivergent women and the people who love them. Today, you are here with your host, Emily, and we are talking about relationships today. This is a very important topic, I think, for any adult, of course, and I mean romantic relationships. FYI, I'll just put that on there. Not platonic, romantic. And I think particularly for neurodivergent people, there can be struggles with connection, making that leap, having a relationship that works for both of you. And I'm not sure how much I've spoken about this. I know I've mentioned my husband a bunch. And if you've listened to a lot of other episodes, you've heard about him here and there. But my husband and I have been together since, let's see, we got together in 2006 and we got married in 2008. It's now 2023. So this October will be 15 years. It'll be our 15-year wedding anniversary, which to a lot of people, I posted on a subreddit about this for ADHD partners recently, and they were shocked. They were very impressed and asked that I discuss how this happened, how it could be, what methods we use, if any, and strategies so that we can stay communicative and really live a life that we enjoy together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss how we got together so long ago and our kind of journey since then together, where we've been, what we've done, and strategies that have helped us that might be helpful for you if you are neurodivergent and looking for a partner, or a neurodivergent and are with a partner. Maybe you're struggling and there might be some tidbits here for you that will help. If you've listened to the podcast previously, you know that I am originally from the UK, born and raised. Historically, familial-wise, my father's side goes all the way back to the Picts and the Norwegian invaders to Scotland thousands of years ago. I said thousands, maybe it's hundreds. I'm not good on this kind of stuff. And my family's lived in London for generations on my mom's side. So I am British through and through, but I met my husband in America and have lived in America for the past 15 years or so. I was an exchange student in 2006 from my UK college, and I got a full ride scholarship to UC Berkeley. When I was looking at places to live in the US for my exchange year, there were a couple of different options. I could go live in the dorms, but I didn't want to do that. The dorms in the US are not similar to the ones in the UK. You get your own room in the UK, and it's more like a family. You cook, you clean, there's a kitchen, there isn't a meal service, that kind of thing. And you could live off-site and da-da-da-da. But what came up is that I could live in a student co-op. And a student co-op is like a converted hotel or convent or something like that, where a bunch of students will live and cook and clean for each other. This will be helpful information for later. But the co-op that I moved into was, I think, 64 people, which my autistic side is horrified by that idea, and my ADHD side is enamored with that novelty idea. So I traveled to America. I've been out of the country a few times, but only to France from the UK. I hadn't been to any other countries. And, oh, actually, that's not true. I'd lived in China for a few months on my gap year. So I'd lived in China for a few months, and I'd been to France on a few vacations. So I traveled to the US, and I get checked in to this student co-op, and you do actually share a room in the co-op, which was definitely wacky and wild to me, but I was sharing with a British person, so we kind of were on the same wavelength there. And how I met my husband is my now husband, he had lived in the co-op for a year before. He's a year older than me. And we had what's called the socially awkward barbecue? Was that what it was? The socially awkward barbecue? because now the ice cream social is coming up in my head. I think it was the socially awkward barbecue. And I was sitting in the parking lot of the co-op with a bunch of other people, and we had a fire going in the center, and my now husband walked into the parking lot. Everyone reacted very excitedly, so you could tell that everyone loved him, and he, was important to their community, and I was immediately fixated. He was exactly my type visually. He had long hair, which is one of my things for guys. If you have long hair, sold, done. And I immediately was drawn to him. And basically what happened is we spent all evening, with all these people talking and this kind of thing. And by the end of the barbecue, everyone had fallen away. And the only people that were left were me, my British roommate, my now husband, and his roommate. And we were just talking and hanging out. And there was definitely a connection there. There was something there. And long story short, what ended up happening is we got together maybe 4 weeks later after a lot of dilly-dallying, not sure, if we were something or other, whether to say something. We ended up getting together. And it was great at the beginning. It was all sex all the time, all fun all the time. After the first semester, we ended up moving in with each other. So each semester you could choose to move rooms and share with someone else. And so if you were in a relationship with somebody, it kind of made sense if you wanted to take it to that level to live with them. So after only 1 semester, we moved in together in this co-op. That sounds intense, and it was intense. Our connection was very intense, and I'm not sure if this might be to do with my neurodivergency. Hyperfixation, obsessive thoughts, maybe, one-track-mindedness, right? But it was very intense, and we just kind of saw something in each other that we recognized and knew was right. And this happened actually for his adult cousin. She met a friend of a friend that her friend had been trying to set her up with. And that day when they met, there is a photo of them arm in arm looking out over something. And they have that in their house because now they're married with twins. So if you kind of recognize something in someone right away, it's not always too fast. But sometimes I wonder if it was too fast because we just jumped in head first, I'm telling you. And why I said the co-op situation might be relevant to this is that when you're in the co-op, you have to keep your room clean, right? That's up to you. But public spaces, someone is assigned to clean those spaces. Every day, someone is assigned to make dinner. So my assignment, I loved making dinner. So I made dinner with someone else for 64 people once a week or something. And that subsidized our rent at the co-op. And so a lot of things didn't have to come up when we first moved in together. Keeping public spaces clean, keeping tidy, who's gonna cook, who's gonna clean. My husband's assignment was to do dishes once a week or something, so he did dishes in an industrial cleaner for 64 people. And it just took a lot of pressure off the relationship at the beginning. We didn't have to worry about all these different things about how we worked together in a living situation, which I think a lot of relationships are that way, right? I mean, there's so many people that don't live together or move in together for months or years after they've been together. I think that's really common. But at some point, we decided to move out of the co-op when we were still in college because we wanted our own space. We wanted to feel like adults and blah, blah, blah. And we wanted our own place to live in. So we moved into a studio in Berkeley, California. And this would have been, 2007, 8, 9, something like that. We got married in 2008, so I can't remember if this was before or after we got married, but I'm telling you right now, a studio in Berkeley, California, back then was $13.50 a month. Yeah. So we moved into this studio, and things started coming up almost immediately. There was the kind of, what is our communication style? Who's responsible for this? Where is our money coming from? Who are we having split accounts? Resentment built a little bit because we hadn't really discussed what our expectations were. I did all of the cooking, and really, because of how I was raised, just expected my husband to do the dishes, to set the table. And I don't know, even now I think that's just kind of normal, but that wasn't how it was for him growing up. So I don't think it's okay to say something is normal or not, right? Or you could say something is average, but how do you know what is average? You have to always set the expectation. You have to say to somebody, this is what I'm going to do, and I expect this from you. And then you need to hear from them what they expect and what they're willing to do. And really, in the end, it's about what you're willing to tolerate and live with. Because we all have our deal breakers, right? And we all have our things that you say, I'm never doing that. But if you have someone who isn't wanting or, just doesn't think to set the table when you're making food, is that a deal breaker? And it's okay if it is. That is okay if that's a deal breaker for you, but you have to set that expectation, and if that expectation is not met, then that's up to you to say, okay, this wasn't met, this is my deal breaker, now I'm breaking up with you. And that's something we really didn't do before we moved in together, or even when we moved in together. We just had internal expectations that we thought the other person should know because it makes sense, it's normal, quote unquote, it's average or whatever. And I think it can be particularly complicated for neurodivergent women because women in general are trained from a very young age to take on more of the mental load, right? You're trained to be the one who cooks, who cleans, who keeps the family going, who takes the photographs, who does the scheduling, who knows what's going on in the family. And when you're neurodivergent as a woman, you can seem like to others that you have it together, or that you can take on more than the man in the relationship, which eventually that back will break, right? That's the straw that broke the camel's back will come up. You will realize that you cannot do all of this and you need help. And I think that was another issue in our relationship, is that I took on all of that mental load just voluntarily. It wasn't like my husband said, hey, you need to do the scheduling, you need to do that. I had just been trained from such a young age to do that I continued doing that. And then became resentful and overwhelmed, quite frankly. I can't keep track of everything. I can't do everything. No one person can for two people. When you're one person, it's a struggle enough. But when you're in a relationship, taking on the full mental load is not fair for anybody, and that often falls to the woman. So if you are a man in a relationship with a woman, neurodivergent or not, think about that. When there is an appointment for your children or your dog, do you look up the appointment the day of when you're going to drop off the child or the dog? Or do you refer to your partner and say, hey, when is that appointment? Hey, where is it? Hey, what are we doing with that? What do I need to ask? You know what you need to ask. And if you don't, you need to be more engaged in the relationship and your family. And I'd like to say that there was some magic bullet here that fixed this whole thing. There wasn't. What ended up happening is we were in California while my husband was graduating. I'd already graduated from college, moved out there, gotten married, blah, blah, blah. And the 2008 economic crash happened while we were living in California. And it was absolutely devastating for us. We weren't paying our rent at the time. My husband was in college. His parents were paying the rent. I couldn't get a job to save my life. I would show up to jobs, just part-time shitty jobs, and there would be hundreds of people in line for this job. It was absolutely insane. And so once my husband graduated from UC Berkeley, we decided after about a year of living in California, trying to struggle and push through and get a job and this kind of thing, that we were going to move back to his home that he grew up in Florida. And the idea is that we were going to live there for 2 to 3 years, save some money, figure out what we were going to do, bond with family a bit more because Florida to California is very distant, and then kind of move on with our lives. And what actually ended up happening is we lived in his family home with his mom. The house is quite large, thank God, and she's a godsend and blessing. But we ended up living in his family home in Florida for 5 years. Now, there were lots of benefits to this, which is why we didn't really have to work on a lot of stuff during this time. His mom lived there, so she was doing a lot of the cleaning of the house that she always did. We would show up most nights and she would say, dinner's ready, or I'm going to take you out to dinner. There just wasn't as much pressure on us as a couple, as a unit, to really work on the things that were bothering us or that could rear their ugly head if we were living alone. And so it kind of gave us a breather for those 5 years, but also we didn't work on what we really needed to, which was a problem. And really what was making it work, despite my neurodivergency, despite my husband's flaws, and despite all the things that come with trying to make a relationship work, is that we were insanely compatible, and still are, in a lot of different ways, not just interests and outlook on life. So we didn't even realize this because I wasn't diagnosed until about 12 years or so into our relationship. But the fact that he has chronic migraines and I have sensory issues meant that we didn't engage in certain things that exacerbated that. So we didn't like to go to loud restaurants together. We'd rather stay in together than go out here, there, or wherever. And that served us in a really positive way that we didn't even realize at the time. And what ended up happening after those 5 years living with his mom is we moved out to Oregon. And that's because I got a job there. We planned this. I got a job there that I really wanted to take, and he moved out there, obviously. We were married, with me. And we ended up spending 3.5 years there. Living alone, away from family, no friends, because it was a brand new state, really kind of isolated. And that's really where the cookie crumbled, where we really figured out what the issues were. We had a lot of communication issues, which it's so interesting to say that now, because if you've listened to my other episodes, you know that I have serious auditory processing issues. So I struggle to repeat stuff back. If you say a long sentence, I won't even really know what you said. It really has to be simple. And we would get into, let's say, arguments where you're just talking, right? But then it escalates. And he would say, da-da-da-da-da, you made me feel this way, da-da-da-da. And I'd kind of be blank because I'm going, well, okay, I've got to process this. Okay, I don't even know what he just said. Or I would say something back to him and he comes back at me and says, that's not even related to what I just said. And then what I would say is, can you repeat what you said? And that would drive him crazy because he thought I wasn't listening to him. And there's stuff from his childhood where he felt like he wasn't listened to by his parents. And so me bringing that up, that I wasn't, saying, can you repeat it? And him thinking I wasn't listening, really triggered him. And it made our talks become full-blown arguments where I would end up bailing because he would confront me and say what I just said. You can't say what I just said because you weren't listening. And it made him feel really alone. And made me feel really alone because I didn't understand really what he was saying because I was listening, but I didn't hear what he said because I had auditory processing problems. Now, this is not such a huge issue because he knows this about me and I remind him. So I'll say, and it's not because I wasn't listening, but can you repeat that? Or I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Not that it's not frustrating. Trust me, auditory processing issues are frustrating for both parties in a relationship. But the fact that you can bring it up and remind someone and both remember where you are and be on the same side is really, really important. In the end, we ended up moving back to Florida. We always knew we would to be closer to family, but we wanted to live it up large. We'd met in California on the West Coast. So we went back to the West Coast, ended up in Oregon. Thought Oregon was going to be like California. Spoiler, it's not. There's a reason they call Oregon and Washington the Pacific Northwest, because it's a completely different culture and area. I was a dancer at the time, professional dancer and educator, and I had a career-ending injury that I still suffer with now. So we ended up moving back to Florida sooner than we thought we were going to, which actually now was such a blessing because we moved back in November 2019, right before the pandemic of 2020. And if we hadn't done that, we would have been stuck in Oregon for maybe 2 years, alone, without family, without any support, really struggling. So that, in the end, really was a blessing. And I want to talk about some strategies that we have used and I have used to really help us along the way. And some of these you might already know, but if I'm telling you and you've already heard it, it's probably a good strategy. And some of them you may not have heard of. The first one is a joint calendar, right? It's pretty common nowadays, I think, that on your phone you have a family calendar with whoever is your family. It might be your roommates, it might be your husband, might be your mom, dad, whoever. And everything that's important, or not important, but is just going on in your life is put on there. So you remember, they remember, you know what they're doing, because, oh my gosh, if my husband comes to me, as an autistic person, if my husband comes to me and says, would you like to go out with our friends in 2 weeks? I'd say, sure. Doesn't get put on the calendar. I completely forget it. 2 weeks later, my husband goes, you're good to go out tonight with, and I'm like, hell freaking no. Hell no. That needed to be on the calendar. Sorry. And in addition to that, I recommend getting one of those magnetic calendars that goes on your fridge, and you can update it monthly, and you'll fall off of it. You'll look at it 1 month and be like, yeah, that's 2 months old. But whenever you can update it is helpful, so that you have a daily visual. Because for people with ADHD, it's very much out of sight, out of mind. And physical contexts are better than digital. So a phone is great, but actually there is studies been done of people with ADHD where if you have a journal or a calendar, it's better to have a physical one than a digital one. The next thing is color coding. This is something I worked with my therapist on, and I actually brought this up and she thought it was an amazing idea. What you can do is by your door or wherever you leave for the day, somewhere that's safe, when you go out the door, you put a box. And this box is going to be brightly colored, okay? It's going to be yellow, fuchsia, pink, lime green, something like that, like a plastic box from Michael's or Target or something. And that is where you're going to put everything you need to go out the door. So when you get home, your work bag goes in there, your keys, your wallet, your key card for work, things like that. And it's by the door, and that's where everything goes, so that when you're leaving the next day or whenever, you know that's where everything is. Your sunglasses, all the things you need to go out the door. If you're in a cold place, your scarf, I don't know, your gloves. That's where all the things that you always lose are going to go. What you can also do is the things that are going to go with you in that box, you can put a little strip of duct tape of the same color on it. So you know that they all go together. There's kind of a visual element. Your wallet, the box is yellow, the wallet has a yellow strip on it. The phone, maybe not your phone because you're going to have your phone with you all the time. But your sunglasses have a little yellow strip on the back, that hooks over your ear that no one can see. and your key card from work has a yellow strip on the back. That's been very helpful for me and helped my organization in the morning so I can get the freak out of the door. And if you have children, this is something you can institute for them as well. You can have, yellow box for mom, green box for dad, pink box for James, blue box for Sarah, whatever. You can have all the different boxes that have their school things in, so you're not running around like a chicken with your head cut off in the morning, and you know where everything is. It's not going to be perfect, but if you build that habit and that conscious habit, which a habit isn't supposed to be conscious, but if you try to build that over time, you can remember to do that, and you'll always know where your stuff is. Another thing that people talk about all the time, but it's also an issue if you don't have free-flowing money or savings, is all of my bills are on autopay. All day, every day, they're on autopay. Which, like I just said, can be an issue if bills are rising, you're not sure how much money you're going to have this month, that kind of thing. But if you don't have that issue, put them on autopay. You'll thank me later. They just come and go. I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know the date my water bill goes out, my electricity bill, my internet bill. I have no idea. The bill just goes out, and I'm so thankful for that. And in the same vein, if you ever set up a free trial, so we've all done it, right? Free trial for this thing, free trial for that. You'll only pay $80 7 days from now, blah, blah, blah. As soon as you set up the free trial, look when the date of billing will be, and the date before that day, put it in your calendar immediately. It should be part of the process of signing up for a free trial, is that you put in the cancellation date on your calendar. That's a tip from me to you. Everyone who's signed up for Peacock, Paramount, Fabletics, whatever, put it in your calendar when to cancel it. Another tip for getting ready in the morning, create a uniform for work. If you don't have a uniform, create one. You go to work max, let's say, I'm going to say 6 days a week max, right? If you're doing 7 days a week, oof, I feel for you. But let's say 6 days a week, because a lot of people do that. I currently go to work around 3 days a week, because I'm hybrid work from home. And what you need to do is set up what they call is a capsule wardrobe. And what that is you have a few different items of clothing that go together. So if you like to wear dark colors, which I think, being neurodivergent, I'm not necessarily thinking that we're drawn to black and gray and things like that, but they are easy to wear, right? If you have yellow and black and then brown and then blue and then green, it's like, oh my God, what goes together? So set up a few outfits that you have 3 pairs of pants, different styles. You have 5 different tops, a couple of sweaters, a cardigan or 2, things that go together, and just bank those outfits. You can even take photographs of them, like your Carrie Bradshaw or Alicia Silverstone in Clueless or something. You can put those outfits together, take a photograph of them, so in the morning, you know, I'm going to pick that cardigan with that shirt and that pair of pants. They always go together, and that's what I'm wearing. Honestly, at my job, I don't know if anyone's noticed. I think they probably have, but I wear the same outfit every week. The same couple of outfits, with just a switch up of a pant or a sweater or something. If you have the energy or the wherewithal, you can lay these out the night before. For me, that only lasts for about a week or 2 before I fall off of that. But if you can do it at all, that's great. And the last thing is that if you're in a relationship with somebody, you should both be in what I call is maintenance therapy. That is that you are going to therapy once or twice a month minimum. When I was trying to get diagnosed, I didn't know I needed to be diagnosed with anything. I had an inkling, but I fell apart during the pandemic. And my therapy appointments were $15 an appointment because of my really great health insurance. I was doing 2 appointments a week. So that's 8, I had to do the math, sorry. 8 appointments a month, right? That's a lot. And then when I thought I was all like good and dandy, I just dumped therapy. And I was like, see you later, catch you later, whatever. Really, you need to be in maintenance therapy, which is once a month, at least, you are seeing a therapist. If you're neurodivergent, absolutely. And then if you're in a relationship, your partner should be as well. They need to be bringing up things that they're struggling with. They need to be dealing with their own emotions, their own responses to you and your responses to them. So if you're not in therapy, get in therapy. If you're struggling with the cost of therapy, look up sliding scale therapy in your area, because it probably exists in the US for $60 or less an appointment. And that per month, a lot of people can afford. I'll tell you, when I first was looking into therapy, I had health insurance. Kind of. I guess I had health insurance, but the appointments were going to be $700 a month. Now, I forget what they cost, but I think it's something like $30 per appointment or something. So I absolutely recommend maintenance appointments in therapy for you and your partner. And really, in the end, what you really need to be cognizant of when you're in a relationship is empathy. Empathy and the other person's vulnerability. Because everybody's vulnerable, right? I have this memory of being in Jamaica on vacation. Jamaica is one of me and my husband's heart places, we call it, which is one of those places that just touches your soul, and you have amazing experiences there and memories. And we were in Ocho Rios, and if you've been there, you know there's kind of a square, and it's very active at night, and they have a fried chicken shop there. I can't think of the name of it now, but it's very active. And we were in there, and my husband was ordering us food, and I remember looking over at him, and I'm going to get emotional. I remember looking over at him, and he was so vulnerable in a new country we hadn't really been to, asking for food. It seems so silly thinking about it now, but he just looked like a little child in an adult's body. That is your partner. Every person has their child, right? What do they call it? You have to heal your child in therapy. If you look at your partner and with empathy and see their vulnerability, you will see that they are just trying to make it through life the way you are. Whether you're the neurodivergent one or not, you need to accept your partner for all their flaws, for all the things that they do for you and don't do. And really, in the end, you have to make a decision. What you need to do is you need to pull your own weight, whatever that is, because everyone has their things. Trust me, if you're listening and you're neurotypical and your partner's neurodivergent, you got your stuff. And you got your stuff that's as hard to deal with as it is being neurodivergent, that stuff. But you just have to be super open, super vulnerable, do your best as much as you can, and when you can't show up 100%, 70%, you gotta tell them that. I can't show up today. I am at 20. I'm at 50. I'm at 45. I need your help. And you need to decide in those moments whether you're going to take it or leave it. That's really what it is. Can you tolerate, enjoy, accept this? Like I said at the beginning, is not setting the table for dinner a deal breaker? Or is it just something you're going to deal with for the rest of your life? Either decision is okay, but as long as you show up as your vulnerable self, accepting the other person as their vulnerable, broken self, injured self. No one comes out of childhood perfect without a crack in their shell, okay? Whether you're neurodivergent or not. And you just have to decide, are you going to push forward with this person who's also broken? And that's what my husband and I have done. We've been vulnerable, We've been the most open we've ever been with anyone else. We have accepted the worst flaws in each other. We have loved our flaws in each other and loved the best in each other. It's rarely been perfect. It's been steady. It's been loving. It's been joyous. It's been difficult. And if you're looking for more resources on this, I really suggest and recommend listening to Michelle Obama talk about being in a relationship, because it is tough being in a relationship, and she discusses being in a relationship with Barack and how difficult it has been, becoming president, having children, and it really is a slog sometimes. You decide, is that what I'm going to do, or is that not what I'm going to do, and I'm going to move on. For me, it's been the best decision to stay and be with my husband and create this life that we're now living in Florida, that we love, in a place we love, with each other. And I really can't imagine it any other way. If you have questions for me about this or comments, please reach out. You can find me at Gmail on My Brain is a Wonderland pod. You can find me on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram under My Brain is a Wonderland. Please leave a review, a 5-star review, if you're enjoying what you're listening to. It helps to push this out to more people. And please share this. If you are liking this and you're comfortable sharing it on your own pages, social media, please share this in your community. I would love to reach more people and connect with more people just like me. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of My Brain is a Wonderland, and I will see you again for Season 2.